Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas, March the 3rd, Saturday. Welcome to our video commentary. You know, it was 15 years ago this month, March 2003, that President George W. Bush made the decision to invade Iraq. And so much time has passed, so much political debate since that time, that I thought it would be a good idea to go back and at least remember a little bit why we did it and look at some of the consequences of it. Well, the reason we went into Iraq, of course, that all goes back to 1990 when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait and he was thrown out of Kuwait. And then during much of the 1990s, Saddam Hussein spent pretty much the decade under certain restrictions by the UN, but he basically gave the finger, if you will, to the international community and did not live up to any of the agreements that he was supposed to live up to, something like 11 or 12 UN resolutions that he never respected. And then after 9/11, obviously, Iraq took on a totally different meaning, a totally different urgency, because after 9/11, you had to take people like Saddam Hussein much more seriously than you did before. Not so much because they would use nuclear weapons directly or chemical weapons against the United States, but more so because they could pass them on to terrorist organizations and terrorist groups and so on. So that was kind of the framework, if you will, the context in which the invasion took place. And yes, there were ups and downs in the invasion, but by the time the ball was passed to the Obama administration, Iraq was actually rather stable. They had had elections and things were looking fairly stable. Then I think President Obama made a very bad decision when he pulled out the troops early. We should have been able to leave a military operation or some kind of a military presence in Iraq. I think that destabilized the region. It created the kind of vacuum that gave rise to ISIS and so on. But looking back at the decision, I still think it was the right decision. And let me tell you why I feel it was. North Korea. When you look at North Korea today, and you look at the importance that North Korea has, for one reason and one reason only, because it has a nuclear weapon. That is exactly the kind of fear and the kind of concern that many of us had about Iraq. You know, what if Saddam Hussein had conducted a nuclear test and confirmed that he had a nuclear weapon? Well, that would have changed the entire region. It could have probably created wars in the region because you would have had Israel, obviously, would have been very concerned about Saddam Hussein. The whole region would have looked a lot different and a lot more unstable than it even looks right now. Another consequence of the Iraq War is that Libya gave up its nuclear weapons. And that, of course, was a positive as well. So looking back at it 15 years later, I think it was the right decision. And I simply mentioned North Korea. North Korea is what happens when you leave people like this in power and you give them the opportunity to get weapons, and that then changes the entire thing. I mean, the North Korea problem would be entirely different if North Korea was a conventional military power rather than a nuclear power. It would be an entirely different military operation if North Korea didn't have those nuclear weapons. So that's the reason why I feel that it was the right thing to do, and I think President Bush, as time passes, will get the credit for the decision that was made to remove Saddam Hussein in 2003. And overall, I think it was a pretty good operation, looking back at it now 15 years later. I want to congratulate all the men and women who served in Iraq, and of course we remember the 4,400 or so who were lost in that very important mission. But 15 years later, Iraq, removing Saddam Hussein, was the right thing to do. We have all of these commentaries over on YouTube. We also have them on my Twitter, and we have them on my blog. Have a great day, everybody. Good weekend. It's actually, they say it's going to be nice around here, so we'll see how that works out. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.